So welcome to AP Stats. You have a purple sheet of paper in front of you. We're going to title that Formula Central. Formula Central on the purple sheet. Now, the purple sheet will not be a sheet to which you have access during the test. Many of the sheets, or rather many of the formulas on the purple sheets are on the green formula sheet. However, the purpose of having Formula Central is to really understand these things in depth. Now, you're going to see formulas for this before we even begin numbering them. But just to let you know what symbols we're going to use, we're going to answer questions like, what's the probability of event A or B happening? On the Titanic, that might have been a question like, what's the probability of being alive or in third class? So these are just A and B represent events. And the way that we're going to represent that in this unit is the probability of A union B. So an OR is represented by the union symbol. We're going to come up with a formula for that. We're going to need a formula for the probability of A and B. What's the probability that you're alive and in third class? That's a different question than what's the probability of being alive or in third class. The mathematical notation for and, even though it might seem like union and go together, it's actually union goes with or, intersection goes with and. So it's A intersect B. There'll be a formula for that on Formula Central. Not A. For example, what's the probability that a randomly selected person on the Titanic is not in first class? There's a mathematical symbol for not. It looks like an exponent of C, which stands for complement. A complement. Complement means not A. So if you want to represent not A, symbolically, in AP Stats, we represent that. It looks like A to the C power, but it just means A complement. And then finally, what's the probability of A given B? What's the probability that you end up alive? A randomly selected passenger on the Titanic is alive, given that they're a first class passenger. What's the probability that they end up alive, given that we know they're a third class passenger? If I recall correctly, first class was somewhere around 62%. Probability of alive given first class was 62%. Probability of alive given third class was only about 25%. These are conditional probabilities, and they're represented with another mathematical symbol called a slash. In fact, actually, it's not even a forward slash. It's often just a vertical slash. A given B. So this exponent of C, A complement, that's probably a new symbol for you. And also the given, or the conditional probability symbol of a vertical slash is probably a new symbol. Are those new for you?
Yes,
Yeah.
the
So-
C and slash.
Yeah, the C and the slash and the vertical slash. Okay, so those are some of the symbols we're going to be using in Formula Central. So there are several addition rules. So let's write out the first actual formula. It's in the addition rules section of Formula Central. And the very first formula on Formula Central is if A and B are disjoint. Okay, so that might be a new vocabulary word for many of you. I want to draw a picture in a Venn diagram of what we mean by disjoint. So, here's a Venn diagram where you have set A and set B that have no overlap whatsoever. Might be something like first class passengers and third class passengers. When there's no overlap between two sets, we call them disjoint. So if A and B are disjoint, then if you want to find the probability of A and B, actually let's start with A or B. If you want to find the probability of being in first class or being in third class, symbolized by the probability of A union B, then you would simply take the probability of A plus the probability of B. It's a really nice formula to begin with. It's pretty straightforward. It makes sense visually. Well, let's see. Suppose we have 10% of the passengers are first class. Suppose that 15% of the passengers are third class. The probability of being first class or third class would be 10% plus 15%, or 25%. What a great formula. It makes sense. All you have to do is add two numbers. Do you like the first formula on Formula Central?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice formula. And now, before we go and look at the other formulas on Formula Central, I would like you to take a look at the other handout, and let's start to get into the content here. And then we're going to go back and forth. We're going to be adding formulas to Formula Central. We're going to be doing some actual problems. So here's something you can discuss with your fellow group members. Problem 1. We're going to consider events A and B. Now, suppose that the probability of event A occurring is not 0. So if event A is third class passengers, just want you to know there are some third class passengers. And the probability of event B occurring is also not equal to 0. Also, I'd like you to consider that events A and B are disjoint. Events A and B are disjoint. Okay, so here's the first question. With those givens, question 1. It's an always, sometimes, never question. The assertion is that independent events are disjoint. And here's your options. A is always, multiple choice. B is sometimes, and C is never. So if you're watching on camera, just pause at this point. I'm going to pause the camera while you have a chance to talk about it.